Alright boys, I wasn't planning on making this video this early, but apparently the JP version of the game is just playing a big prank on us NA plebs over here, apparently, because they are getting a quote-unquote Oku rerun before we are. I mean, it's a main interlude, so it's not really a rerun for the event. In fact, I really don't see the point of having a main interlude for Oku, aside from it being like part of the main story, right? Like, it's supposed to lead into Lost Belt 4, so I understand it, but we still have a lot of free-to-play units that still need to be re-released for people that have not gotten access to them yet. And I understand that after they did the whole, like, massive Halloween rerun, if you guys don't know, basically last October, they brought back like all of the Halloween servants and just shoved them into October. And after getting that, they're probably going to do something similar with like all the Christmas servants, all the summer servants at some point. But they still could have brought back people like Shiki or Kentucky Rider or like Chloe, like these servants that are like not connected to things. So I still kind of stand by the fact that there probably should have been a better main interlude to bring back. But I'm also not complaining, because if you guys saw my community post, I used my one multi that I had saved up for JP's anniversary coming up to try to get lucky and get Kama, and I got Kama and Parvati, so I guess I cannot complain. On that note, let's go ahead and talk about how good Kama is and if she's worth summoning for. Spoiler alert, yes, she is very much worth summoning for. Whether you have Scotty or not, Kama is going to be a very valuable DPS in your Chaldea. Not only is she insanely popular because she's a big busty Sakura face, but she's also capable of putting out big, busty damage and annihilating alter egos specifically, which makes her a very, very valuable piece to have in your Chaldea. But enough lollygagging at the beginning of the video, let's go ahead and jump right into this, starting off with her hits, of which Kama's got some very impressive hits. As an assassin, she's rocking a very higher than natural star generation stat at 25%. And while her quick cards aren't quite as broken as Jack's, they are still very high at 4 hits apiece, and this actually combos very nicely with her very high natural NP gain at 0.74%. Also keep in mind that her arts card is also pretty strong as well, although she only has the one with 3 hits. With her being able to generate massive amounts of stars, if you're critting on her quick and arts cards, you are going to basically be fine in the NP refund department. But if for whatever reason you don't think you're genning enough NP, Kama has something in the back pocket to help out with that NP generation. I do want to also go ahead and mention that her passives are also quite good. Specifically, you want to keep in mind that she does have a passive 10% quick buff. This will become important when we talk about the overcharge on her NP. And also keep in mind that she is always immune to charm. She is just passively immune to it. So if there's ever a particular boss that is giving you trouble with charm, I don't know, maybe they make some really busted, broken Uriel boss or something like that, you just bring Kama and she will absolutely decimate that fight. Also, she has that really nutty 5-hit extra attack. If you guys don't know, the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars NP and does big boy damage. And 5 is the golden standard. So she's literally absolutely perfect when it comes to her hits. And in fact, you actually do get some usage out of her extra attack because her natural NP gain and star gen are so high. So, you know, if you have the extra servant coins laying around, Kama's extra attack is like one of those extra attacks that actually will get really good if you do the like append skill that levels up her extra attack. Although I would probably always say that just going for the starting 20% battery is probably just generally going to be the best one to go for anyway. If you're down with the memes, you can do the extra attack. But enough memes, we got to get onto the skills. Starting off with skill 1 in her kit. This may seem a little bit lackluster, because in practice, really all it is a targetable overcharge by 1 stage that lasts for 3 turns, and a 4k heal that is targetable on somebody that is on a 5-turn cooldown that also reduces whoever you target's max HP by 1000, which really isn't a whole lot. It really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Most of the time you're going to be using this on Kama herself, and again, not really going to touch on this too much here, but this will get touched up on when we get to her NP. So just look at this skill 1 and kind of just put a pin in it, right? Just stick a pin in it and just think about it for later, because on its own it probably seems very unimpressive. So we'll move on to skill 2. Skill 2 is actually a very strong skill. It gives Kama guts for 1 instance, but people forget it is not on a turn timer. This guts will last until it is used, which is insanely broken, in the same way that Ku's dodge skill is broken, because the dodges aren't on a timer, they are there until they have met their use. So you can actually store this skill up, you can use the guts once, and then feasibly by the time 5 turns roll around and the cooldown has been elapsed, you could have another guts ready to go. The only problem is that if you're in like shorter fights, you might waste that guts trying to get that extra 30% attack buff that she has right here that lasts for 3 turns, because that does help Kama's damage out a lot, getting that extra 30% attack, because it'll multiply into some of the other buffs that she does have. But do not forget that guts that she has on the second skill doesn't wear off until it's used. It's very strong, and it makes Kama very good for these like very long boss fights. But again, the 30% attack buff for 3 turns is also very strong, because it will multiply into some of the other buffs that she will give herself. But for now, let's talk about skill 3. Skill 3 is where I think all the magic for Kama happens, alright? Because skill 1 just seems like very odd unless you actually look at her NP, which we'll do right after skill 3. Her second skill seems very broken in the way that her survivability is nuts, and it gives her a very strong attack buff. But other than that, it might seem, I don't want to say tame, but you know, you might be like, well, it's only like 2 things. Skill 3 is where they just dumped the rest of Kama's stuff. They were like, here's a 50% battery, which I don't think I have to explain why a 50% battery is absolutely broken, but for some of you guys that might be newer players, not only is this really good to help Kama just consistently fire her NP on bosses, because you might run into a scenario where you're like, oh man, I'm at like 60% gauge, boom, skill 3 comes off cooldown, and you now have a 50% battery. You can just insta-charge your NP and blast the enemy. But it also makes her really good for farming, because as you guys will know, there are some very weird nodes coming around, and you guys have experienced some of them, that have like one really strong enemy on wave 1, and then like waves 2 and 3 are like 3 and 3 enemies like normal. Or like wave 1 will be like 2 people, and then wave 2 will be like 1 guy, and then wave 3 will be the normal 3 people, right? You'll just have like these random weird nodes where they just like splatter in just one really beefy dude. And that's where a lot of these single target servants with 50% batteries really shine, because after you've had like your support just like dump all of their buffs, you can plug suit them in and have them just take care of everything. Or if it's a wave 1 enemy, you just have Kama pop her 50% battery with any 50% starting charge CE, blast the enemy, plug suit her out, and you start farming as per usual. It makes them really good, right? It gives them that extra niche, right? Like, being good in boss fights is all well and good, and it's very strong. It's something that Kama is comfortable doing, but also just having that added utility of being really good for these annoying farming nodes is just supremely valuable. And again, that's just the 50% battery she has. Everything else here is also nutty. She basically grants herself super effective class advantage offensively and defensively against alter egos for 3 turns. So, you know, if you don't have Musashi and are having a hard time taking out some of these annoying alter ego boss fights, Doman comes to mind. I know that some people are still struggling with him in like the Lost Belt 4, you know, right before the Arjuna altar fight. Not only can Kama take care of the Doman on wave 1, she can also just go box up Arjuna altar, especially if you have double Scotty. Or she can box up, don't want to spoil too much, some future alter ego fights, I'll say. And so that's also really insane. Then they also just gave her a small 20% crit damage buff for 3 turns. I don't know why it's only 20%. It's like the most random thing that they just decided to chuck on in there. It's super random. Technically, it's 26% because she does have a passive 6% crit buff. And I mean, at that point, it's almost a 30% crit buff for 3 turns, which is pretty standard, but again, it's just really weird, but it does make her crits bite a little bit harder. Not that she really needs that crit buff, because she has Scotty, and Scotty gives you 100% quick crit damage, so I'm sure her crits will be absolutely fine as is, but this just makes them even stronger. And then the last effect actually ties into her NP because she reduces all enemies' charm debuff resistance by 40% for 1 turn, and I'm actually going to lead into the NP because this perfectly segues into the first effect on Kama's NP, where she has an 80% chance to charm the enemy that she attacks with her NP. Now, usually you can just charm lock an enemy with this because the chance is actually pretty high, even if they have like a decent magic resistance of like 20% or something. But once you fire the third skill, which you usually do to fire her NP anyway because it has the battery on it, you pretty much guarantee that that first NP is going to charm the opponent, which makes Kama increasingly strong. Now, remember that first skill that I told you to just take a spin in, right? And just kind of like remember that we're going to cover it later when we got to the NP? Well, now is the time to talk about it, because if you look at her overcharge, you'll see that she stacks quick buffs. She gives herself anywhere from a 20 to 40% quick buff, depending on overcharge, for 3 turns, meaning Kama, who is good at looping and stacking her NP, will start to quickly stack these quick buffs on top of each other, and keep in mind, they multiply into that attack buff she has on the second skill, because different buff types in FGO actually multiply into each other. But that's actually not as crazy as it gets. For one, remember on skill 1, she gives herself 1 stage of overcharge, right? So at bare minimum, your first NP is going to start off with a 25% stack instead of a 20% stack. Or if you can have somebody go before Kama in the NP chain, you could potentially get a 30% stack. But it's actually not that low because remember, she has a passive 10% quick buff, and those quick buffs add into each other. So actually, the overcharge should read 30 to 50% for 3 turns because of Kama's own passive skill. And I know that I've covered Kama a little differently than other servants, but that's because Kama's kit just kind of flows together. Kama is actually, for lack of a better term, a unit, right? Like, she's actually a complete unit where everything kind of weaves into each other to make her like almost like a perfect servant. It's funny because on stream today, or I guess yesterday when this video is going up, I was mentioning that I was like, oh, it's kind of weird that they would do like a main interlude campaign, but not bring like any buffs for the servants. And someone asked me, well, how would you buff someone like Kama? And I was like, I really don't know, because Kama's already like pretty good as is. Anything more would just be like excessively broken on her. I mean, do you give her a special damage mod? Maybe you buff the NP and give her like an anti-good or anti-evil or anti-like humanoid type of buff, something like that. Or a special damage mod against charmed enemies that procs first, that way she could actually take advantage of charming her enemies and stuff like that. You'd also have to make the charm proc first before the damage as well, but you guys get what I'm saying. There's really not a lot you can do with Kama. Like, she's already just really good, and I feel like that's a testament to why people are so giga hyped about this servant. I mean, not only is she just really insanely good even to this day, she's good with or without Scotty. You can use her with like Waver that everybody has access to for free if you just finished Fuyuki. You could even use her with Castoria. She'll take the 50% NP that she can get. She'll take the extra NP gain for just even easier looping. She'll take the attack buffs. She'll take the Threat Against Humanity special damage mod. She'll take the extra survivability, the debuff cleanse on Castoria's own NP. I've done it. It works out pretty well. It's like Kama is just like a DPS that you could just throw in anywhere and she'll put in work. I wouldn't even be surprised if she works with double Koyanskaya, because she does have 2 Buster cards, and I wouldn't be surprised if that just worked out really well. So yeah, Kama is absolutely busted. The only thing I'm going to tell people that are playing on JP is that the JP anniversary is coming up. We don't have an official date yet, but we know it's coming. And I'm just saying, be a little smart with your Saint Quartz, right? Like, don't completely go buck wild and spend all your Saint Quartz. But if you did, I mean, I did the same thing. I spent the little savings I had for JP anniversary, and yeah, I think it was worth it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Leave a like and subscribe for daily FGO content. And with that being said, I'll be back tomorrow to talk about my girl Parvati, because she is also on Rate Up and is also equally insane. Once again, I want to thank everybody for just being able to put up with my vacation setup. I'm still streaming every day, by the way. I figured out that I could stream directly from my phone, and I have been making that work. It's surprisingly good, It's just the quality might be a little dubious at times. The audio is still good, I can still play the game just fine, but I think we're only going to be playing NA, so just keep that in mind. But with all that being said, thank you for your continued support of the channel, and thank you for guys for just, I don't know, I guess believing in me to keep doing this stuff, even with a ghetto setup. So thank you guys very much. And I'll stop rambling and stop being all mushy-gushy, and see you guys in the next video tomorrow. Peace. Late, guys.